lineup of speed webinars. I hope you're all well and staying safe. I know there's been a lot of talk this week about us getting back to training, and we can now train in groups of up to 6 people at a time. We are doing some webinars to describe and explain how we can do that best and safely in our clubs and in our independent groups. Martin Rush, the head of coaching development, is doing some webinars tomorrow. I'll put the link in the chat box for you a bit later on if you want to sign up, mainly just to explain the guidance that's on the website at the moment, the England Athletics website at the moment. He's repeating it, so he's doing it 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. So I'd really recommend everybody signing in and having a listen. And it's a question and answer FAQ session, so you can get some specific information from him as well, which is great. As I said, I will put the links to those webinars in the chat box. I hope you are all well, as I said at the start. I didn't say my name, Shani Farmer, Event Group Lead for Speed. I just wanted to welcome you all and welcome Mike, who's going to go through an amazing presentation this evening. We're really, really fortunate that we've got a coach who has produced a championship gold medalist, who's willing to share his whole process, his thought process, the planning, and what actually happened throughout the season. This is pretty unique to have this situation, and Mike is very graciously offered to share the journey he took with Craig at the time in 2005 to the European Junior 100-meter title, which was amazing. Before we get started, bit of housekeeping, as per usual. We are all using our home broadband and Wi-Fi, so if you are having trouble seeing us or the picture is distorted at all, if you can refresh the browser window. If that doesn't work, go back to the original email that was sent out to you, click that, and it will pop up a new browser window, and hopefully that will solve all your problems. If not, if that doesn't work, if you can log off any phones or other tablets or other laptops using your home broadband for the duration of the presentation, that should clear the bandwidth enough for you to see us and hear us clearly. If there are any issues at all anyway, the whole presentation is being recorded and will be put up on Athletics Hub next week, so you can view it there, and there's also a link to share it on YouTube, so you can share that amongst your athletes if you need to share the information any further. And with that, without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Mr. Mike Leonard. Good evening, Mike.
Yeah, good to see you all. Thanks for joining us again. As Shani said, what we want to do really is to look at basically a case study from my past, part of an athlete's journey. I've got lots of information that some of which isn't on the presentation, but I'm happy to send out the schedule that Craig had for that year of training. The other thing I think though tonight really is to think about this and reflect on how you prepare an athlete for a championship. And as Shani said in one of her emails earlier, the process is the same. You just got different considerations. You know, I've mentioned there about different levels. You know, people may think, oh, you know, this doesn't apply to me because it's an international championship. I disagree. It can be adapted. English schools is obviously a big one for age group athletes. It's trying to get your athlete to their peak when it matters, and when it matters to them might be English schools, it might be a regional championship, it might be the county championship. You just do things appropriately and do your timings differently. So I want to go into things about training and travel, locations. During this year, I went to a couple of fairly exotic locations, or certainly exotic for me. And obviously, those things about what the expectations on you as a personal coach. When can you access your athletes? Can you? English schools, you can't be a team manager unless you're a teacher, and you can't access your athletes and warm up unless you're a team manager. So you've got to work around that. There's nothing you can particularly do about it. Obviously, certain counties are slightly more formal than others, but that's invariably what happens. The presentation in the main tonight, I did in looking at the leaflet over there, February 2007, which was about 18 months after this all happened. I've kept that presentation the same. I just think I just added in one picture. But as I say, I want to sort of look at it and get you to reflect on things more widely than that. Hopefully it's a nice, interesting story. I got some interesting stories to tell around this year that happened to us. But think of it in that vein as well as to how you would prepare your athletes for whatever competition they need to be prepared for. So here we go on this. So it's Craig's preparation for the European Juniors is 2005, which seems an eternity ago now. I've had to remind myself on some of these things as well, and I've got my diary open just out of shot to see if I can remember some other things. So that's me at the time. Been coaching Craig for 5 years to that point. Also coached a young lady called Joey Duck, who some of you may have heard of. Coached her until 2007. She actually came along, I think, 2 months before Craig joined my group. To get one star athlete is amazing. To get two, and these two, I tell you, have got had some talent. Two of the best young athletes this country has ever seen, in my opinion, and the rankings back that up as well. But enough about me and my CV. Bit of background to Craig's 5th year in athletics by the end of this season. I coached him from the beginning. When he was directed to the club by his PE teacher. A lot of people don't necessarily shine in training. They're good trainers, but they don't necessarily stand out, if you like. And I think Craig was one of them. He'd been there only two months before his first race. Until his first race, I hadn't thought anything particular, staggering as it were. And then as a 13-year-old, his first ever race after 2 months training, he does 12 dead, which isn't a bad time as a 13-year-old. So by the following year, he was the 3As and the 15 champion. Actually 5th in the English schools, if I remember rightly, that year as well, 2001, in a blanket finish, the English schools in Exeter. 2003, he was actually the 3rd best in the world. He was the best non-Saudi Arabian under 18 in the world. The two lads that beat him out in Canada were both from Saudi Arabia. His PB then before the season, what we're talking about, was 10-4-1. Targets, obviously the first thing to do, look at, you know, what we want to achieve. Primary target was to win the European Juniors, which we knew were in Kaunas in Lithuania towards the end of July. Times we set the range, 10:29, 10:35, somewhere between there. He ran faster than that, which you'll see in a little while. I think when you're talking about preparing athletes as well. He was 18 at the time, still in school. A levels were a big thing. Need to study as well, and you'll notice from competition schedules, as if there's a few gaps. Yeah, that's in part because how many races does an athlete need? Well, some are different than others. He comes to the boil fairly quickly, but that's the other big consideration. You wanted to pass his A levels. You wanted a good place in a good university. We talk a little bit about winter training. I was saying before that I'm a traditional grassroots British coach. I certainly was then. Long to short, I do all the sloggy stuff before Christmas, speed endurance in the first part of the calendar year, and then bolt on the speed. Craig's preference was really towards the speed element. Used to certainly have both him and his father saying it's saying something like, if you want to learn to play the violin, why practice on the piano? Speed is the end game, stick to speed. That's the newer approach anyway. I like to think I'm an athlete-centered coach. I add towards Craig's preferences. He's the one that's got to go out and do the running, not me. I was happy to do that. He trained 6 times a week, 3 on the track, 3 in the gym. He was a funded athlete even then. So we had the benefit of being able to call on lots of support, one piece of which was an S&C coach. We worked with a guy called Greg Boff, who was an Australian working for the EIS in Milton Keynes. They got a centre at the National Badminton Centre, and Craig worked with him 3 times a week on the strength stuff. Handy, I could concentrate on the track. As you may have seen from my CV, I have got an S&C qualification as well. But yeah, Craig's the expert. I did allude to some of these in the energy system presentation that I did, just to look at these in connection with Gary Winkler and what the different categories that are bandied around, and see how these could be categorized. And I did send out this presentation actually to some people, a couple of people who emailed me afterward. So apologies for that, but hopefully me talking it through will help you to understand it further. Yeah, this was, I looked up in my diary, I'm thinking, what's this, first, second week back? Well, we actually started the winter training somewhere in the middle of September, something like the 12th of September. It was fairly early on. I suppose we wound down the previous season fairly early as well. just to, you know, mention a couple of things there. I don't do as much of it now just because of logistics, but the 7x100 I think is a good session. You know, run 100, walk back 50, do 7 of them, you end up where you first started. It's a flexible one, I find, because you can vary the pace, so you can vary what you're working on. Obviously, they're 70%, you know, fairly aerobic. Trying to just build up a fitness base. Having said, you know, Craig is all about speed. So you know, you've got that, and things like the turnabouts, which I mentioned again before, which I do a lot less of. Again, you know, thinking about the technical elements and how fatigue is gonna impact on them. As you see there, yeah, weights and core, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then obviously the track and a rest day. Going into January and thinking about, again, you know, some of the sessions there. The Sunday, there's a big woods just south of Milton Keynes, by a couple of the villages. It's got this big, steep, sandy bowl. You run up a hill there. It's quite tough. So that was always a good one, and quite you know, again, different, a different sort of session for us. The 7x100 still in there. Still doing some of them, obviously, you know, bringing the pace up a little bit. And some 200s, you know, some fast 200s, and by good recovery, 10, 12 minutes or so. Thinking. You'll see on the gym side circuits for 3 sessions. January to March, Craig had a bit of a niggle, so left off the weights a little bit and did more on a circuit basis, and it was that type of thing. Quite, you know, quite varied. Some with, you know, some of the machines, some of the body weight exercises as well. You know, the traditional burpees and all of this stuff. So thinking about competitions, obviously, as I say, you know, we set a competition program, and again, I mean, you're trying to, you know, think back exactly, you know, some of the thought processes. As I say, obviously A levels were pretty important as well. So you'll see, you know, a cluster then in March, obviously, so getting into some of the more important competitions, or so early important competitions. A bit of a layoff then, you know, a couple of weeks, just a couple of meetings in June, and then obviously the big ones, obviously the national championships at the beginning of July, where you had to do well. You know, no two ways about that. Obviously, as you see from Loughborough International, he did a PB. He did his PB then, so 22nd of May. That blew the qualifying time away, which takes the pressure off somewhat. Obviously, you've got to compete. You've got to worry about head-to-head races. You know, challenges in that respect. But we knew we had or he had the qualifying time. And again, you know, think back again to how you're preparing your athletes. The when is the qualifying period? What's the qualifying time? When have you got to do it by? What are these trials? This obviously the under 23As is the trial for that. You've got to do well, as I say, there to catch the selector's eye, as it were. So for me, it's a build up. It's possibly 3 competitions in a row. 3 consecutive weekends maybe. Then you're starting to push it a bit. Things like that. Those are the considerations certainly in my mind, and obviously we're trying to wind it on up. So the National Junior League, the first race out, not particularly worried about that. It's a run out. It's early season. Obviously seeing how we are as well. So there were some highlights on the way, certainly on the competition side. As I say, the Loughborough International was a biggie. He got picked for the GB Juniors, and I'll show you. We've got a couple of videos coming up in a moment, so you can see that. Showing you without the straight race, but there were actually, I think it was something like 8 false starts before that race. Got away at 9th time of asking. Craig's a junior, he's an 18-year-old up against some seasoned and very good international athletes, and he held it together and he won it. So what can you say? You can't say any more than that to a PB. People were fairly impressed at him for that. Bedford International, I haven't got a video of that, unfortunately, but beat Darren Campbell amongst others. So that was pretty good scalp there. And the county championships, where he beat a certain Greg Rutherford. His times were slow, 11:1 to 11:2, but against a 5.6 meter headwind. So to do those kind of times wasn't bad, to say the least. There were some losses. South of England, down in Portsmouth, came third. Yeah, Simeon and Harry both beat him. Again, I got a video for that in a moment. And he lost the national championships. Came second to Simeon. Obviously, Simeon, another really talented athlete. Big challenge, yeah. One gonna have it all his own way for sure. And the semi out in Kaunas, Simeon beat him once again. So let me show you some of those races. So as I say, this is Loughborough. He's in lane 5 after 9 false starts or 8 false starts or whatever. I think you could probably see the timing going, and it got rounded down, obviously, 10:23 to 10:22. So yeah, we knew it was all going well at that point. This is the South of England. He's in 4, Simeon in 3, Harry in 5. Not the best start, as you can see. And obviously when you get, when you're up against talent like the other two, to give them that little bit of bit of a start isn't ideal. Went on. This was actually on a Friday night down in Crystal Palace. Was on lane 5, Harry and 4. As you can see, that it's fairly close. It's it's they're all vying for being top dog. So that was a good, again, thinking of the head-to-head situations between them all. Harry, of course, was destined to go to the World Youth that year. He's a year younger. Yeah, he won out in Marrakesh. So the nationals, last video I got for the moment. He's in 2, Simeon 3. Yeah, Simeon was happy with that one. Again, some of the start could have been better from Craig, from a little bit of yeah. Well, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to look at questions as well. Yeah, we'll come on to some questions. Okay. So yeah, as you see, it's there are some wins and losses. Yeah. Any questions? Thanks, Andy. Yeah. Interestingly enough, yeah, he didn't. I was thinking, he didn't run too many. Having said that, there are a few 200s in there. He did run, obviously, so club stuff as well. So yeah, not too many, but a few. Certainly, I do like my athletes to double up when they want to, or if I can persuade them to. But yeah, I suppose, as I say, Craig was a real flyer. 100 meters was his bag. So we stuck to that a lot, and yeah, he had a decent range. He was a decent 200-meter runner as well. He bought into it. Yeah, I tried to involve. I did try and involve athletes in the plan. I think, if you don't do that, then you're just foisting it on people. I think, if you've got 11-year-olds, it's slightly different. If you've got an 18-year-old who is a very bright hombre, then I think it's definitely more difficult. So yeah, he seemed happy. At least I think he was. Yeah, if he gets to see this, I don't know whether people know he's actually in Australia, living out in Australia nowadays. I did contact him to say I was doing this, and the videos, by the way, I got from the Pickering family archive. Craig's dad, David, popped a CD round for me last weekend, and we've been working on putting them up. And thanks to Shani for sorting out some of my IT glitches as well. Right, thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, they were in there. Obviously, some of the faster stuff. Certainly in my schedules, I used to always sort of if I really wanted to work on the technical stuff, you know, talk about, you know, 60s concentrating on technique. I think if I look at the full schedules, you'll see some of that kind of annotation in there. Nowadays, of course, you know, people, of course, would say technique, concentrate on technique. It's, you know, once the shape is gone, is the session over? Yeah, probably. You know, then you need to sort of stop the session, change the session, whatever. So certainly technical was in there. I worked a lot on his arm action, which I was never totally happy with, to be honest. But I think we changed that a lot during this sort of winter into summer. So hope that answers our Malcolm. Oh yes, yeah, I think so. As I say, I think I've changed my philosophy a little bit. As I mentioned again, if you listen to me on the energy systems, I've changed my thinking a lot. I do more of a kind of a hybrid type system. I did change around, as I say, for Craig, accommodate Craig's preferences anyway. But certain sessions and things, I definitely change. You know, I do less of the kind of turnabout type things. I do a little bit more speed. I would do more technical stuff again. I'd also be better, I think, at the technical stuff. You know, some of the stuff that we learned on the National Coach Development Program from the likes of all these, you know, the big American name coaches, you know, Lawrence Seagrave and Vince Anderson and all of these guys. So I think it's a never-ending process, reflection. I like to think I was a decent coach then, but I think I'm a better one now. Okay. So obviously more opportunities coming up for some questions in a little while, but you know, thinking about again the build up, and again, you know, coaches out there, reflect on what you would do, you know, how you adapt, how things go on. So yeah, we're talking about the end of March, April. Yeah, it was a great trip. I was able to go out with Craig on the, you know, coaching on the Algarve. It was a UKA trip, so we had the benefit of lots of support staff and video analysis from biomechanics experts, light gates, which I didn't know. So we can, you know, we do something with them. There's one particular session that we did with Harry and his coach at the time, Matt Favier, which was, I meant to look it up actually to give more detail, but it was on grass. It was something slightly longer, you know, 250, 300 type reps, and just very enjoyable. You know, good to get away from the track. It was obviously in warm, all the rest of it. If you haven't got the benefit of all of that, you know, how do you start trying to change things or not necessarily change things, but to build up things in this sort of climate? You know, great if you've got some of the indoor facilities, because again, over here in those dates, it's still, the weather's not great. So you know, you need to think about, you know, how that's going to affect things. So into the season, National Junior League, as I mentioned, first run out of the season. All the weight stuff on core still going on, still doing some fair, reasonable distance work, and obviously, again, Greg's name pops up. Some 110s. So, a couple of weeks before the county championship, this is an interesting story because I think it just shows up a couple of things in terms of my thinking. Greg came along, just turned up at the track. Not even sure why. He just said, Mike, can I join in with your session? Yeah, Craig, is that all right? Yeah, fine. Okay, so we'll get you two on the track together. As you can imagine, it was fairly competitive, to say the least. Greg got the upper hand, and over them. He beat Craig, if you like, in that session. As I say, got very competitive. I made a comment, I think, something like to Craig afterwards. We want you to be European junior champion. You're not even going to be county champion. His response was, he won't beat me. And so it turned out, have confidence in your athletes, folks. Obviously realistic, but confidence. As I mentioned before, Craig came to life. He was a good trainer. He came to life on the competition track. He's very, very, very good competitor, to say the least. So going into into the season, a mixture of 60s, 150s, 200s, all pretty quick. And if I say fast, it's normally flat out or near to it. A good recovery, I would say, is 10 minutes. Maybe that's another thing, Phil, from your question, that especially with the pace that he's generating, and would have been then, I would have probably given him a little bit more rest in between some of the runs. So starting to sharpen things up again, just sort of some 3-point starts, maybe this sort of thing on the Tuesday. Some rolling 30s, which is another session I certainly used to love a lot. On the Thursday, going into the county champs, which again I would normally have said not particularly worried about the county championships, but he had Greg to contend with, so we wanted to be on song. Okay, so a few starts, some rolling 30s, some fast 60s on the Tuesday. Into rest, then a couple of days rest, Friday, Saturday, going into Loughborough International. A lot of this, as I say, we for the strength stuff we were using Greg Boff at the National Badminton Centre, EIS, S&C guy. I've got some notes. I lost some stuff before I even put this together in 2007. And Craig helped me out on some of the stuff that he was doing, and I got some notes from then where he was saying, he'd lift, a couple of weeks before, considered, a couple of the major competitions, obviously Loughborough, the nationals, the juniors, the European juniors, to just 2 weeks before lift a bit heavier. So he was talking about you know, 95% for set of 3 power cleans. So, you know, 95 kilograms because his PB was 100. Again, I've got a little bit, another slide in a moment about some of the weight stuff that he was doing. And we did some maintenance stuff. Don't forget, in the background we got the A levels going on. So you know, some longer stuff as well. And again, I suppose thinking of your question, Andy, you know, across the range, certainly still trying to keep this kind of stuff in there. Obviously, going to help is 100 as well. But yeah, you know, I wasn't going to go right into all the you know, everything being short and fast, as it were. But other than those sessions, you know, this is June per se. You know, otherwise, yeah, it was short, fast, 30s, 60s, that kind of thing. So the weights, yeah, April to July. So he was doing two sessions a week, Monday and Friday, three sets of 3 reps. And as I say, it says down there, yeah, cleans under a kilo, so he's doing 80, 85, 90 for percent, you know, percent of 1 rep max for those 3 sets, and similarly then for squats. Again, he was doing, and I'm, you know, just referring to some of the notes again that I got from Craig to remind myself. You know, the other session of the week was kind of plyometrics, so depth jumps and onto the box, etc. And he was doing some, you know, using some resistance bands with high knees and some walking drills and that sort of thing as well. Yeah. Any more questions at this moment? That's a good question, Stu. Yeah, certainly, but I think with most of them, I love 150s. You know, try and see how that's happening. Obviously, sort of drop offs between the reps. You know, things like that, and obviously, you know, as I say, it didn't have, you know, the benefit of light gates and whatever. So, you know, it's good when you were able to do that. You know, out in Portugal, things like that. I think, you know, nowadays again, I would advocate, you know, to do more of that. So for him, I think, yeah, you know, some of the shorter stuff, make sure the speed was there, and I'd certainly use a better, without the light gates, for example. You know, did a 60. I'd certainly use a better timekeeper than me. So that's somebody from the club to time, you know, when he was a decent timekeeper. So yeah, 60s, 150s, something like that, and that's what I would use now, to be honest. Right, yeah, that's a good one. Well, you see from some of the races, and I've forgotten a little bit about this in terms of the execution of the race. Strengths, he was strong at the end. He used to come through very strongly. So, maybe some of the planning as well helped. The 150s, 200s to be able to hold that. Obviously, he was strong physically as well in the gym, etc. Weaknesses, start again, execution of the race. The start, I think, was the worst part of his race in the main. You see with some of the, he probably a bit inconsistent, maybe. He could do some pretty good ones, but there were some, as you just saw, weren't great as well. I think strengths as well, psychologically. I would put him down as I said before, an excellent competitor, bright guy. Don't know again whether you heard, he's just finished a professional doctorate. So he's got that level of qualification, and he does a lot on social media, and there's a lot of stuff that he researches and puts out on the social media side. So I think you've got an athlete who is intelligent, knows where he wants to go, and has talent, then you've got a fighting chance, that's for sure. As a coach, it's quite easy, really, isn't it? Yeah, I think it should be good luck in some ways. I think Milton Keynes gets a lot of bad press, but it's a great place to live, and it's got a young population. Yeah, these guys came along fairly within short space of time of each other. Obviously, Craig and Greg are the same age. Joey just a couple of years younger. Were we doing anything special? No, I don't think so. We had a good club. We obviously still have. We got the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service awarded yesterday, which is over the media. There's some great guys in the club, very organised. So yeah, the other guy, of course, who needs mentioning in the same breath as those three, I think, is a young man called Chris Clark. And if you ever saw him as a youngster, blimey, he won the under-17 3As, 200 and 400 meter titles within half an hour of each other once. Phenomenal young athlete, and of course was world youth champion at one point. So yeah, it's a good club. So final preparations. I'm watching the time as well. He obviously lost the under 20 3As, came second, and I was sort of standing next to a top coach, who everyone's name of which everyone would know. I certainly should know, that's for sure. And he said he can still win the Europeans. Now, I learned from my mistake back a couple of months ago, or months before that, and my retort was, "Yeah, I know we can." Yeah, we were still confident. Having said that, don't like defeats particularly. So I mentioned obviously Joey. I 10 days before, so I actually travelled out to Marrakesh because I went out to the World Youth with Joey. So David, Craig's dad, oversaw the final sessions in my absence. I think that's another point, isn't it, in terms of preparation. Coaches can't always be there. During all of this, I had a fairly, well, I was going to say important, not that important, but a job. I had a full-time job down in London. I commuted down into London with all that entails at a fairly competent, high-powered job in the charity world. So you can't always be there. There's a lot happening. As I say, I wanted to go out support Joey in Marrakesh. So David took over. You need some support. It seemed to work well. Again, it worked at the end of the day. We achieved the goal. So David, who was a coaching then and was a qualified coach, took over basically and was my eyes at the track for those final sessions. Find something, obviously trying, coaches finding backup when they can't be there. Competitions is the same. I get asked, and I ask coaches all the time, can you look after so and so because I can't be there. I'm retired now. It's easier. It's great being retired, by the way. That's by the by. So we're starting to get close now. Obviously, wanted a rest after the 3As. Still doing some weights work. Obviously, there's some dipping down as well in terms of some of these lighter sessions as well. As I say, some of the bigger competitions, heavy session, then start tailoring it off. So here, you wanted to do the English schools. Last chance of actually taking that title. We did it. Playing 5 different kit. Of course, this is Buckinghamshire schools. Wasn't I must look up who the other 2 guys were. Got quite close to him. At this moment in time, I have no idea. But yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, it probably looked closer than it was in terms of comfortability on the track. But they were obviously pretty good athletes as well, weren't they? Okay, so again, starting to rest up a bit, starting to shorten some distances, not doing some of the longer repetition type stuff. Some rests in there, obviously, post and pre competition. Okay, just so I've got this awful habit. I don't know whether you can see when looking now. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at some of the questions. I shouldn't be. Shani's looking at it, and I've just seen one there, also half on the screen there, about arriving and what time we had there. And again, I suppose this is one of the considerations, isn't it, in terms of travel to the competition. So he travelled on the Tuesday, and they were into the heats and the semis on the Wednesday, and finals on Thursday. So it's all fairly quick fire stuff. No time to train out there. All the rest of it. So that was fairly straightforward in that way. On the day, it was a bit damp on time, so varying conditions. Nice stadium. Mind of a champion. I've alluded to that a couple of times. He was a good competitor for sure. And that, you know, this might be rose-tinted glasses, that last point, because I had a query with me before now, but it might be wrong, but I still like to think Milton Keynes headed Germany in the medal tables for at least an hour, because of course Craig and Greg won the Britain's first two medals. Let's say that might be rose-tinted glasses and wishful thinking, but yeah, I'll stick with that. Yeah, then it was that was the report in AW. So it was a 1, 2, 3 for GB, and if I can find the right videos to show, this was a semi with Craig in 3, Simeon in 5. You can see it was the bogeyman all the way along the season, can you? Simeon. Okay, not too bad. The start could have been better, couldn't it? And obviously Simeon got the drop on him there, but with Craig closing. Now think about my comment about a strong mind and being competitive when you watch this one. So it's Alex in 3, Craig in 5, Simeon in 6. I've forgotten just how close that was. 10:51 to 10:52 to 10:06. So it was a very, very close affair. Befitting what went along with all these guys throughout the season. So there was some aftermath to this. Craig was then picked for the senior 4x1 relay in Helsinki for the world champs. Just to blood him really. So he went out there. I didn't go to that one, obviously I was in Lithuania. We did a cracking session with Michael Johnson at St Mary's. That's on the internet actually. It was for a Sky documentary called something like The Fastest Men on Earth. It wasn't the latter one that Michael did with Bolt. It was pre-Bolt or pre-Bolt at senior level. Where I got this frantic call off Craig one morning. As I say, I was in full-time work. He said, I've just been offered the opportunity to do a session with Michael Johnson, but my coach must be there. Right, okay, let me have a word with my boss. Got the day off. We did a session with Michael, which was, as you can imagine, absolutely fantastic. Really, 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 really good. And he interviewed us, and we had all the EIS guys and doing all the analysis and all the rest of it. And I'm obviously in the background. They didn't show any of the interview, but one of my bits of feeling proud really is Michael Johnson being very complimentary about me on camera. So that's good. And then of course he moved down to Bath. He went away to uni, had the opportunity to join Malcolm Arnold's group, and obviously one of his athletes at the time, Jason Gardner, who Craig had got to know over, you know, off and on over a couple of years, because he even ran against Jason in a league match when he was still an under 15. First time we met him. Great guy. Conclusions and summary: we set out to win the European Juniors, and he did it. Okay, so he achieved that. So the method was right for us on this occasion. It worked. Nobody can actually take that away. Different ways of doing it, obviously, but it worked for us at the time. Fact is, the strength stuff. Greg Boff, as I say, worked with Craig there. Really, you know, excellent S&C guy. So that covered that. We did do some technical stuff. You know, arms especially. I was trying to work on at that point. Probably should have done more on stance as well. But, he is mentally tough. We had confidence in achieving the target that we actually did. So, you know, relevant messages, I think, from some of this. You know, that's a good story from my past. I've enjoyed reliving it. That's for sure. But you know, think about, you know, the messages and the preparation. Then, what's your target competition? How and when have you got to qualify? Being it, you know, the county schools, the national championships, whatever. How do you get through on those trial occasions, and how long have you got for a qualifying period? And do you want to get that out of the way? Again, you know, going back to Joey. I remember the one year, I can't remember, was this same year or was it 2004, where, you know, we were fairly confident to get in the qualification time, went out to the first competition and got it. So then we could take the pressure off. Again, she had exams coming up. She could then, you know, go off the boil a little bit to be able to come back. So, you know, kind of double periodized kind of year. So again, you know, mentioned there about the studies and obviously that coming first. Travel, yeah. Even if you go into English schools, if it's up in Gateshead and you live in Cornwall, that's a bit different than, you know, if you live in South Shields or somewhere. If it's a team event, obviously, it's invariably, you know, something like English schools, again, you'll go up by coach. But are they good travellers, you know? So that's another thing. When are they going to have to travel? I was a team coach in an England team that went out to Dublin last year, youth cup. We had to catch the ferry. The team were actually asked to be in Ellesmere Port on a Friday morning by 10:30, without being able to stay overnight. You know, when is it all happening? On the way back, we had to catch the 7:30 ferry out of Dublin. So yeah, that's tricky. You need to get up, you know. Need to, you know, get your athletes to be one of the ones who are going to be up. You know, they're going to be in bed when they need to be, so they're going to be up to be able to show what they should be doing. You know, they're there. You know, there were a couple of athletes who didn't particularly get up. They had to be chased to get up, and we didn't miss the ferry, but we could have done. I don't think they would have been, you know, team management would have been very happy with it. Time to train, see the venue, obviously depends on the travel, all the rest of it. Time differences, obviously, you know, if you're talking about international stuff. Marrakesh and Lithuania that year were fairly easy. Obviously, going down there a little bit further, the couple of things that we did have: food The teams were staying in, 4 or 5 star international standard hotels. But the food the GB and the Americans were staying in didn't seem to have a lot of fruit. So parents were ferrying in fruit all the time to the team hotels, which was bizarre. Obviously, things like culture. Different parts of the world operate differently. Stupid comment, it's self-evident, isn't it? But I as a coach forgot. We were in Marrakesh, went out to a restaurant, and when the waiter asked me whether what drink would I like, I immediately said a beer. Was told, of course, that's separate because we're in the hotel. It's fine, international hotel, but separate. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, apologies. I'll have a Coke, please. So things like that. Lithuania again. Eastern Bloc. Not that long before that, some idiosyncrasies there, shall we say? Weather conditions, temperature. I know I'm running over on time, by the way. You might have seen I'm trying to speed up a little bit. Weather conditions and temperature. Again, Marrakesh. I did one session with Joey there. She only didn't do anything particularly onerous. A few strides and this sort of thing. After the first round, she was absolutely shattered. The temperature, you walk out of an air-conditioned hotel into the atmosphere outside, and it just hit you like a brick. Absolutely amazing. I think that the day that I just mentioned was reported to be something like 42 degrees. So it was pretty hot. Again, I've alluded to English schools and only team managers being allowed in the call-up, which invariably means school teachers. Can you get accreditation? How and when by do you need it? What responsibilities do you have? Who the team coaches, it's their responsibility to get athletes to the call-up rooms on time or whatever. You're in the background, even if you're in the call room, it's their responsibility. That's not yours. They're in charge. Some of them might like you, might be happy for you to do as much as you can, others maybe not. Liaising with them. Do you even need to be there? If you've got an athlete of this kind of age, okay, if you've got a 13, 14-year-old, it's slightly different. If you've got an 18-year-old who's been around a bit, do you really need to be there? I like to be there just for moral support. I'm certainly not saying do this next, do that next. I'm there for moral support, as I say, check now and again everything's okay. And if I get a comment about, I've just left my spikes in the stand, Mike, okay, I'll go get them, you carry on warming up. So it's those sorts of things. But everyone's going to be different. Some top coaches you see, you'll never see in the warm-up area. Any other questions? Didn't have a lot of time to do that. I think if I remember rightly, yeah, we spoke about it. Tried to do that kind of thing of that's behind you now. We need to go forward, not backwards. Yeah, and not a lot of time to adjust anything in particular, just to keep confident, keep a confidence high, think about going forward, and the fact that Simeon, he'd beaten Simeon before and can do again, and it was tomorrow, the following day, that was going to make that was the biggie. Yeah, no medals for the semi. Get medals in finals. I like to think I'm pretty good on the lay psychology as well. Other people have to judge me on that. Right, yeah, it was a case, yeah, Sally, I think, yeah, we covered that, and you mentioned that we covered. So it's chilling, and again, I suppose it's how do you chill? Isn't it? Everyone's going to be different. They haven't got a lot of time, so they flew into Vilnius, the capital, the previous day. Our coach trip, whatever, down to there. Not a lot of time to kill, but again, it's certainly something again that you've got to think about. And how long before is it? Are they going to get bored? How are they going to occupy their minds? And everyone's going to be different on that score, I think. Horses for courses. Yeah, it wasn't 1-to-1. Obviously, I think with group squad situations, some people had to go along. My prime focus was the two athletes I've mentioned, but I did have some other good ones who, were English school, British school kind of standard. So yeah, but it wasn't 1-to-1, that's for sure. I think with the having heat semis and finals in 24 hours, I think it's always good to try and replicate some of these things. And I'm trying to think, obviously, I'm having to think back of 15 years here, but yeah, I think some of the competitions, obviously things like nationals, heat semis, finals coming in fairly quick succession. I think if you can replicate that, so much the better. Because again, I think different athletes react differently in terms of how quickly the races are, chilling in between or not, the timing of the races. One of my athletes recently, I did do a circuit session on Zoom, and I said, right, 11 o'clock. And he immediately sort of said, I'm not going to be up. Well, let me get up, they need to get used to competing at all sorts of times, etc. Pre-competition routine, the warm up itself, we had a routine invariably there. Again, I'm happy in the main, athletes sort of adding in, some stuff that they wanted to do. We had a reflex thing where, you clap, they clap. Craig quite liked that one. So again, just sort of doing something like that for 5 minutes. Fortunately, I did have accreditation, so I was able to get in the warm-up area, and we did something like that, which was good. But yeah, I think, as I say, you can't invariably you don't necessarily get into warm-up areas. I was interested in listening to something like Clyde Hart, when he was over here a couple of years ago, saying he could even get accreditation for the Olympics. You know, Coach Michael Johnson, you can't get accreditation. What? Crazy. Okay, thanks very much.